Hello, welcome to Joy of Stationery. I'm Jennifer, and for today's video, I wanted to give a little bit of an overview of how I have been using my Hobonichi Techos and potentially how I plan to use them in honor of Hobonichi season being upon us, and especially in the lead up to the website not only going live but being kind of available for orders and purchases. The website itself and the full lineup just went up or just became live this past Friday, and I will say that the entirety of the weekend was spent in a lot of decision paralysis. So it's a very exciting and potentially even slightly overwhelming time, but it's precisely because I have been really loving the Hobonichi brand. I have been loving their techos. I have been loving their covers and just seeing the kind of amazing variety that they come up with, and have just been so excited for this release to come. This is the first time actually, and you'll see here, that I got their guidebook. Again, just being such a fan of Hobonichi, I thought that this might be the perfect year to finally get the guidebook, and I'm so glad that I did. As you can see, it features this really adorable felt bear holding a Hobonichi Techo, which I think is really cute. And from the videos that I've seen of the events in Japan, the Hobonichi kind of release event, you know, they even had kind of stickers with this bear and holding the Techo, which I thought was really adorable. For those of you who might be interested, I just wanted to kind of flip through some of this. I won't flip through the whole thing. But just to kind of show you what this features, and what I also have here are the various techos that I am currently in and kind of using and or plan to kind of use, and I'll go over that as soon as I look through some of what's in this guidebook. So again, it's just really cute with this little bear, and I'm absolutely loving this. It looks like they give a nice overview of all of the different techo types that are available this year. I will say I don't know how to read Japanese yet, perhaps one day, so I unfortunately won't be able to do too much summarizing of what the text is saying, but certainly, you know, you can kind of get a sense of, you know, of again the different techo types. The covers come later on as well, and something that I actually really appreciated about this guidebook, even though, oh, look how adorable that is. I love that. Oh, I love that so much. Is, you know, even though I don't know how to read the Japanese, I love that they feature different people, different figures, and how they use their techos. And this is also just kind of you know, something you're able to kind of glean from the photos themselves. So for example, you know, I loved this picture where you see all of the techos. It looks like it's probably the A6 original, but all of the ones that have been used, right? And this kind of, you know, modest selection of covers, and, you know, you can just kind of imagine the way that this person has kind of filled these different techo books year after year, and the different covers that are being used, which I think is just really lovely. They also feature some close-ups, some details of the way different people kind of use the techos. Here we can see the one-piece leather trifold one for the Going Merry logbook from last year, right over here, and how it's been used. I love that. You see all the text kind of covering up the whole thing with these little illustrations as well, and again, how it's kind of looking in the Going Merry logbook as well. So I really just love seeing the way that different people are using their techos, you know, kind of using and loving them, what covers that that they've been giving love to, and you know how they've been using the cover and Techo combinations, things like that. And so we can see here, I think this particular person has done a number of different kinds of sketches, and I wonder if this has been kind of drawn on the. It looks like it might be the black leather Techo cover. In any case, it's a really fun touch, and you can see that this person's kind of using it as kind of different sketches. And so that's something that I've just really loved, is just seeing all the kind of creativity and functionality and the fun and play of the way different people are using this. Like, oh my gosh, that's such a cool layout there. I love how this is looking as well. You know, I love also seeing what different folks have in terms of their cover collection. And so, you know, I love kind of seeing that they featured that here. And you can see, again, all the different ways of using this. Oh, I love that layout. I love kind of using this as kind of a feature in some ways. Oh, and possibly because they've not necessarily used the date itself, so kind of featuring what day it actually is. But yeah, again, there's just something about, you know, because I love stationery, because I love notebooks, and because I love Hobonichi, you know, I just love seeing the way people use their different notebooks and Techos and planners and the covers. And, you know, some of it is so inspiring as well. I'm always kind of on the lookout for, because of how people are using it, you know, different kinds of strategies for organizing and planning is always really kind of interesting to me. Oh, wow. And, you know, again, just the creativity, using different colors, different kinds of deco, or being super functional about that. Like, I'm very curious to see what's going on there, because that just looks just so neat. So yeah, just it's been really exciting to have this, and I'm really looking forward to being able to kind of flip through it and you know, at my leisure, and you know, just to take in all of these really wonderful styles of, you know, documenting our lives, of planning our days. It really does remind me of the way that, you know, I think Hobonichi has kind of conceptualized their Techos as a life book, you know, a book where you can kind of contain your life. And, you know, it's just so wonderful to kind of see this variety. Oh my gosh, I actually recognize these people from the Jet Pens YouTube channel. That's so cool. So again, kind of being able to see the way different people are kind of using this, and you know, the diversity with which people are creative and planning in all these different ways just shows you kind of the beauty of the diversity of the different lives that are being documented. And I just think that's so lovely. And of course, you get the guide on all the covers this year, which I've just been really excited about. And again, this is my first time getting this guidebook, and just because I felt that, you know, I have become such a fan that I would love to have a guidebook, and I felt like this was just the perfect special year for that. So I just wanted to flip through a little bit and share a little bit of this, you know, with you all, in case any of you are also kind of interested in getting this. I know that the Hobonichi site is not yet live for orders, but I had actually pre-ordered this on Amazon Japan, so it came just the other day, and you know, just perfect timing for me to be able to flip through it a little bit and to share this with you, again, in honor of Hobonichi season and their 2024 release. So, of course, what I also wanted to talk a little bit about was the way that I've been using some of the Hobonichi Techos in the hopes that's helpful for anybody who's interested in kind of the various Techos that Hobonichi is offering for 2024, as well as for myself to kind of take stock of what has been working for me and what hasn't. And I hope that kind of going over it for myself is also a way to make the most informed decision about what my 2024 lineup plans will be in the Hobonichi category, which there certainly will be Hobonichi in my lineup for next year. So I want to begin with this. I now have both of the both the A5 and the A6 sizes for the Tokyo Metronome by Hiroko Kubota, and it's just such a beautiful cover. And for those of you who have seen my previous videos, I have mostly been in the Hobonichi A6 Avec, especially as of One Book July. That was a huge success, and I continue to be in it and to absolutely love it, and I've been housing it most recently in the Tokyo Metronome cover. I did want to mention, kind of in relation to that I do have another A6 Techo from Hobonichi, and it's the HON. This is the Night Road cover, I believe, and I had been, I had found it really appealing in terms of design once I actually saw it kind of not really in person, but kind of live in videos that people had taken either from Hobonichi events or because they had purchased one, and apparently, the look of it in person seemed so much more striking than it is in pictures, and that was certainly the case for me as well. So I have two of these A6 Techos from Hobonichi, and what I've been trying to do, this was my main one since July, but I've been trying to bring the HON back into the fold, especially as I kind of think about my lineup for next year, if I would like to have another HON, for example, as well as an A6 Avec. And I think what's been really kind of wonderful about the Avec is that because it is a 2-book per year design, so this one covers July through December, for example, there's a way that it allows for a certain kind of flexibility. You can try out different layouts, for example, or experiment with it for the first half of the year, and you can have a chance to start anew for the second half of the year. And I think this is what I found really exciting about the Avec in July, and why I really wanted to try One Book July using the A6 Avec, because it felt like a new start, but something that I might be able to start kind of really experimenting with as I think about future planning needs. I always love using the turning the page for intentions and goals. For this particular one, I used it for a mid-year assessment that was particular to my writing, and kind of prompted by questions that I had gotten from an academic kind of writing coach newsletter. And this was just really helpful for me to kind of reground myself, recenter myself in terms of what my goals are, but also kind of looking back on what I have accomplished in the first half of the year. And then, I was able to start experimenting with the kind of monthly dashboards by featuring a quote that was resonating with me for the moment, or that I had read recently, as well as this was also a quote, even though it's part of the turning the page kind of on a new segment of time. I just felt like it was a nice way to kind of lead into the book itself. So I wanted to do a voiceover in this segment, just because I decided that it might be a little bit more helpful visually to be able to have stills where I've added some text labels as well as kind of diagrammed out how I've been using different layouts in the A6 spread. In this first one, as you can see, this was at the very beginning of July, so this is how I started out using the A6 Avec Techo for One Book July. You can see that I used the top portion of the page to list a daily priority. The right column I used to list down my tasks and some notes, somewhat in a kind of bullet journal style. On the left column is where I listed some meals, maybe some highlights of the day very briefly, and with a little bit of deco. And in the bottom right corner, I added a tracker for myself. This was my daily writing corner, just as a fun way to track my writing, my daily writing, and giving myself a little gold star to reward myself if I've done it that day, as well as to kind of mark days that I've been able to do some walking. This was a simple layout that worked really well for me in July, and what I found that I was able to do towards the middle of the month is adding something that I needed to for an aspect of my life that wasn't being addressed. So what I added at the bottom here is a sort of mini celebration journal. This came from a need to address some health and medical issues, and from my recovery team, this was a suggestion where a celebration journal, you can kind of write down whatever you accomplish that day, and it can be as small or as trivial as you need it to be, because it's about what you were able to accomplish in the state that you're in, whether it's in terms of physical or mental wellness. And therefore, it's a way to again, celebrate the small wins and the big wins throughout your day. So I wanted to make room in my daily layout to add this particular section. As I mentioned, what I love about these flexible kind of layout spaces in the Hobonichi Techos is that you have room to experiment with what your needs might be. So later on in the month, I ended up switching things around a little bit. You can see this is kind of a transition from one layout to another, where I started to bring in to the right column my daily gratitude ritual prompts. I've spoken about this in a previous video, but basically this became a way of kind of grounding myself, beginning the day with 3 prompts to reflect on how I'm feeling, what the day's mantra was going to be, and what my needs are that day, and ending the day with, what I was grateful for, the highlight of the day, and ways that I could make tomorrow better. This was something that I came across through the Moxie Life Planner, which was something I learned about from a dear friend of mine, and I wanted to start incorporating this kind of daily gratitude reflection into my daily habits. And so I tested out this space in the Techo as a place to do that. What ended up happening then is I moved the celebration journal into the left column just to give myself a little bit more space. You can see that the daily writing tracker, daily writing corner actually switched positions as well, again to kind of line up with the celebration journal. At the top then, I moved from a daily priority to my meals tracking. Much of this layout stayed with me into August so far. I did get to a point towards the middle of the month where I was trying to take stock of my ongoing projects, of which there are very, very many. And so I was able to use this A6 space as, again, a kind of flexible space to try listing these out. So here you can see on the left-hand page that I used the right column to list down my ongoing projects. And this is something that some of you who have seen my previous videos might recognize. I later migrated this kind of list of ongoing projects that was more comprehensive to my Hobonichi Weeks, and so it was a really great way to kind of test this out here and then realize that the weeks would be a really good place to kind of keep track of ongoing projects on a weekly basis. back when I had begun to make the Avec kind of central to keeping a daily gratitude ritual, as well as a celebration journal, this is when I had actually moved my task list to a different planner that I was planning to use in tandem with the Avec, and I had started to do that. While it was pretty successful, I got to a point in August during this month that I wanted to bring my tasks back into the Avec. I did feel like it would be a little bit more streamlined to see if I could figure out a system to do that. What I ended up doing is moving the celebration journal aspect elsewhere, and what I started to have then is a left column that I can then bring the tasks and notes back into. So here you see me starting to do that again while keeping the gratitude ritual on the right-hand column. The main reason for this was because my Avec was my central planner or my central Techo, it made sense for the tasks to be located in the one that I was using the most often, in the one that I was opening most frequently throughout the day. And so I wanted to kind of bring that purpose back into this one, even though the other aspects were working so well, just because I started to kind of reflect on what the best purposes would be for each of my Techo books. And so what you'll see is that because I've migrated the tasks back into this one, some of the things that I've had to move out, I was finding other locations for that I felt would be more fitting for that kind of material or for that kind of information. As I came to that realization about how important this kind of central Techo would be in terms of keeping track of tasks and notes, I did finally kind of move it into the right-hand column so I would have more space for that once again, which is actually, which is hilariously how I began the book in July anyway. And then I used the left column and started to revise the timeline more recently. I felt that the kind of time breakdown of hours wasn't quite as useful to me as it could be. So what I decided to do was to kind of use a different timeline for myself for the hours in which I might be able to kind of track my work. And then I am currently using that particular column for some extra notes, maybe some specialized notes, as well as a space to keep track of things like appointments and scheduling. So this brings me to the Hobonichi A6 HON, which is the other A6 Techo that I have from Hobonichi. What I thought about was the way that the HON and the Avec, while being a similar size, right, in terms of having an A6 layout, were books that kind of in their form factor could serve different purposes. The A6 Avec is really portable because it's slim, and that's pretty much the main reason that it had become my go-to, right? So I could carry it around, I could switch covers, depending on kind of the season or how I was feeling to kind of change things up. And then I had the Hobonichi HON, which is a thicker book because it covers the whole year. It's also a hardcover book. And because of that form factor, it's much more kind of conducive to archiving, right, or kind of documenting a year of my life. So I wanted to bring it back into the fold, as I mentioned earlier. And so when I started migrating the tasks and notes back into the A6 Avec, it was because I realized that things like daily gratitude keeping was actually really helpful for memory keeping. I could look back at, the things I was grateful for that day, and point at something and, laugh with my partner, when I thought, oh my gosh, remember this day and remember when this happened. So because it was so great for memory keeping and because of things like the celebration journal were also kind of conducive to that kind of memory keeping, what I decided to do was to move that information into the HON. I did not begin that way with the HON, so I did want to kind of mention how my kind of use of the Hobonichi HON itself evolved over time. I originally got this towards the beginning of the year in March as a way to have a new Techo that I might try different kinds of kind of functional layouts in. So I did at least want to kind of offer this in case this is helpful, and it's helpful for me to review as well. What you'll see is that I kind of began, again, this is towards the beginning of the year during a particularly busy time. I began with some functionality in the left-hand column, using it for, or using the time table for appointments and the schedule, adding in a checklist, and also at the top kind of using color-coded categories with highlighters to list priorities for a particular category. So because I am an academic, there are different kind of categories that I am responsible for. So it might be related to writing and research, or perhaps kind of professional or public engagement. There's also teaching, and then there are also other kinds of admin duties. And so by giving a particular kind of highlighter color to each of those categories, what I was able to do is sort of, put the colors at the very top of the left-hand column for any given day, and depending on the day, I could write in the highlighted portion what the priority was for that day. And some days had priorities that were very specific to certain categories, but not all of them. And then other days I would have to kind of account for kind of all of the categories that I was keeping track of. But it became a kind of functional way of, again, kind of keeping track of multiple responsibilities and commitments, as well as trying to, keep my eye on particular priorities that I needed to focus on for that day, especially during the busier points of the year. In addition to the kind of functional left column, what I ended up doing on the right is using the top for some daily trackers. I actually was inspired by Megan Rhiannon and the daily trackers that she kept when she was using a Hobonichi Weeks. And some of those kind of categories were really helpful. They were very kind of clear and simple and resonated with me. So I used the top portion as a way to kind of do this kind of daily tracking at the time. What I used for the right column then was for daily journaling. So I might write first thing in the morning, I might write in the afternoon if I had some time, or I might write in the evening. And this was inspired by Helen from the Coffee Monsters Company, who uses the Hobonichi cousin in a similar way, where she lists tasks on the left-hand column and then uses the right-hand column for daily journaling. So this really was a way for me to kind of think about the HON as an all-in-one book at the time. And so I was trying to bring in both the functionality of planning as well as some daily journaling onto the same page, as you can see when I first started the book. At this point, because I'm trying to bring it back into my lineup, into kind of my setup, and using the Avec primarily for my planning, I wanted to use the HON for its sort of optimal archiving purpose, to use as a kind of memory keeper, a document or documentation really of the year 2023. So this was, as you can see here, kind of my attempt to start bringing in some of those elements. The daily gratitude ritual that worked so well for me in the Avec, I've now migrated over into the left-hand column of the Hobonichi HON pages. And the right column, what I decided to do was try to go back to that daily journaling. I felt like that worked so well for me in the beginning of the year, and now that I'm reimagining the HON as a kind of memory keeping document or record of the year kind of book, it made sense for me to go back into a kind of daily journaling, a journaling that could also include the celebration journal that I started trying out in the Avec. And I did bring in the meals tracker at the top just to try it out again. Sometimes I think it can be kind of fun to document, what meals you had throughout the year, and I thought that it would be a nice way to also kind of track maybe the days that my partner and I were cooking together, and by keeping it as part of the archivable memory keeping HON, it might be kind of a nice way to look back on some of the meals that we ended up sharing together, whether we went out for a meal, or whether we cooked something together, and think about things like meal planning for the future, or on the other hand, other kinds of restaurants, or eateries that we might want to try out in the future in our new city. This is something that I feel that the HON can do really well, especially because it is in a form factor that is so kind of nicely archivable, and I do have some hopes for using a HON next year, as well as I get a sense of what kinds of material would work best to keep in a book that I mean to archive, right, in a very kind of specific and particular way. And I've loved kind of how the spine lists 2023 in the Japanese characters in gold foil here, for example, but being able to kind of see, again, future HON books in the A6 size, for me at least, and, all in a row, and kind of seeing the way that I have these kind of beautiful records of my life for that year. So this is something that I'm keeping in mind for the A6 size, for both the A6 Avec and the A6 HON, and the different things that I'm trying out with tasks, with gratitude logging, with a celebration journal, with daily writing tracking, are all things that can be used in different ways in the layout for any of these. And the A6 Avec is just the 2-book version of the A6 Hobonichi original Techo. They also have the A6 English planner, and that's something that I've used in past years as well, and I've really loved for journaling. So many exciting possibilities.